What is up, family? Welcome to another short video. I think this one will be short. I'm actually really excited about this video, and the reason why is because this is something that I've been confused about for a very long time, and I think I've finally come to a decent understanding of what's going on with the Filioque. And if you don't know what that is, I'm going to explain that in just a few seconds. If you're as excited about this video, then go ahead and press like and also subscribe to this YouTube channel. Because it actually helps me out. So go ahead and like this video and subscribe, and let's jump into what the Filioque is. Okay, so the Filioque controversy is a controversy that took place back, in the really started to take shape in the 800s, and but it was kind of leading up. There's a lot of history that goes into it. And I've always been confused about what this controversy was. And the reason why is because this all hinges around a little phrase in the Latin, which actually is Filioque, meaning and the Son. And so basically what happened is the Nicene Creed was, let's talk about this a little bit more in depth. First of all, there was a council at Nicaea in 325 AD. And in that First Ecumenical Council, what they determined was they wrote this creed called the Nicene Creed. Now, a lot of people think that that's the Nicene Creed that we have today. It's not, actually, because in 381 AD, there was a second ecumenical council called the Council of Constantinople. And at this second council is when they actually solidified the language used in the Nicene Creed that we have today. One of the interesting things about the Nicene Creed is that it's actually one of the cross creeds, meaning that it crosses over almost every single denomination of Christianity today. It talks about the Father, the Son, and he even mentions the Spirit. And this is interesting because the understanding of the Trinity and the understanding of who God was still kind of being debated, especially in 325. And so this Council of Nicaea was actually, after a lot of different debate and whatnot, was called ultimately to depose Arius and the Arian controversy. You can read about that. There's a ton of literature that's been written on that and what happened at the Council of Nicaea. And so what they did was they made the Nicene Creed. However, there was still some language that was being debated about. And you can go and you can read all about the language that they were using and what actually changed. There was some language that kind of developed from 325 until 381 in between these two creeds. And the language became very much more specific. And so actually in the first creed created at Nicaea, they used words they said that words were anathema. In other words, if you believed this, you were an anathema. You were cursed, essentially, or you essentially were damned. And at the Council of Constantinople, they actually changed it to use the words that the first council said were anathema. Okay, so all of that history is super interesting, and there we could do entire videos on that, but that's not actually what we're looking at. We're looking at this phrase Filioque. So what is Filioque? Well, in the Nicene Creed, that came out of Constantinople in 381, it says that the Spirit proceeds from the Father. Well, this is biblical, right? I think that everyone can agree that the Spirit, according to the Scriptures, proceeds from the Father. Well, throughout history, from 381 on, and really coming into the 9th century, which is the 800s, what you have is an addition, and it just kind of slips in to the creeds. Now, they would start the councils by reciting creeds. They would, different groups would recite creeds. There was a lot of different places that these creeds would show up. Well, at some point, and this can kind of be documented, at some point they actually slipped in an extra little phrase to this statement that the Spirit proceeds from the Father. What they slipped in was this phrase Filioque, which means and the Son. So the phrase became the Spirit proceeds from the Father and the Son. Okay, so why would that be such a big deal? And one of the reasons that this has confused me so much is because people have said that the Filioque controversy actually split the East and the Western Church. That is, it split the churches in Jerusalem and Constantinople from the Church of Rome. Well, why in the world would such a little phrase like Filioque, something that I think is biblical, and actually something that not only the West, not only Rome believes is biblical, but also the East believes is biblical too? So what's the big deal? Why would this split the two kingdoms? And so I searched and I searched and I searched, and there was really a lot that I learned, but nothing that really satisfied. That is, until I read this book. This book is called, and actually I bought this book because somebody told me that they dealt very shortly with the Filioque controversy. Well, on Growing a Messiah, I have talked about Ryan M. Reeves before. He runs a YouTube video that is a YouTube channel rather that is absolutely fantastic, and I've learned so much from Ryan Reeves. I've tried contacting him before and emailing him to not only see if I could interview him, but also just to see if he's teaching online classes that I could take. I've never been able to get a hold of him, but needless to say, when I picked this book up, I didn't actually realize that he was one of the authors. It didn't click with me. And as I was reading this book, I just thought, this book, the title of this book is The Story of Creeds and Confessions, Tracing the Development of the Christian Faith. Well, honestly, and no offense to the authors of this book, but the title didn't really grab me. It didn't actually explain to me. I thought this was just going to be a dozer. I thought I was just going to be falling asleep nonstop through this book. Nothing could be further from the truth. This book is basically a history book of Christian history, and I can't recommend it enough. It's a page turner. I haven't been able to put it down. But one of the things that they do in this book is they really explain well the Filioque controversy. Okay, so as I already said, this is just this little phrase, and the Son. And so what is the big deal? Okay. Well, in the 800s, you have this controversy. And basically what this controversy is it's not about the Filioque. It's actually about, and this starts even earlier, this actually kind of begins with like Novation and Novationism. But anyway, that's for a different video. Basically what the big controversy in the church is whether or not the Bishop of Rome, which we call the Pope today, whether or not the Pope has ultimate authority over all of the church, or whether or not each bishop in each region has authority over that specific region. So, for instance, if something is ruled on in Rome by the Roman bishop, the Pope, does that apply to all the church, or does the Bishop of Constantinople have authority over Constantinople, and the Bishop of Rome doesn't have authority over Constantinople? This is the major controversy that's kind of going on. And this is actually kind of what's splitting East and West at the time. And so at the time, there are these fake letters that come out, and I could go on for hours about what kind of leads up to this powder keg that finally explodes. So Ignatius was the Bishop of Constantinople, and he became Bishop of Constantinople on July 4th of 847, and he was Bishop of Constantinople until November 23rd of 867. Okay, during a power struggle between Caesars and whatnot, a guy named Bardas became Caesar, and he deposed Ignatius as the bishop of Constantinople, and he replaced him with a different guy named Photius. Now, this was actually really, we don't know whether or not the correct steps were taken to depose Ignatius or not, but it was definitely a controversy for multiple reasons. First of all, did a Caesar have the ability or the right or the power to depose someone in the church? This was, one of the issues. Another issue was Ignatius rightfully taken out of power? And was Photius actually did he actually come to power as the Bishop of Constantinople in the correct way? Well, some people thought that Photius was the rightful possessor of the office of Bishop of Constantinople. But guess what? There was also people who disagreed. And they thought that Ignatius really was slighted here, and that Ignatius should, in fact, be the Bishop of Constantinople. And one of these people was a monk. And his name was, and I'm probably going to say this wrong, I'm really bad with names, so if I've mispronounced names, I apologize. But his name was Theognostus. And yeah, so I could be saying that wrong. But this monk was really upset that Ignatius was deposed, and what he did was he snuck out of Constantinople, and guess where he went? He went to Rome, and he went to go talk to the Bishop of Rome, the Pope, Pope Nicholas I. Well, Pope Nicholas was not so probable. I mean, yeah, he was concerned, I think, with the idea that Ignatius was taken out of office, but what he was really upset about was the fact that Ignatius was taken out of office without his authority. In other words, why in the world was a bishop in Constantinople taken out of this office without Nicholas I's permission? And that's what he really gets upset about. Now, I'm skipping over a lot of little details here, and I'm doing that just because there's so much that can be said about this. And I would refer you to this book, which is The Story of Creeds and Confessions, which is, once again, fantastic. Anyway, so what ends up happening is Nicholas sends emissaries to Constantinople to challenge Emperor Michael, okay? And he challenges him on the fact that his Caesar had put Photius into power without his permission. Nicholas argued that this move could not have been done without the permission of the Pope. Okay, so once again, we have a power struggle, not necessarily of whether or not Ignatius was right or not. At this point, we haven't even talked about the Filioque and how this enters into this controversy. But basically, you have this power struggle. And really what we're talking about at this point is whether or not the Bishop of Rome, the Pope, has the authority over the entire church or not. This is really what's going on still at this point. And as a complete side note, this really doesn't become completely settled until the Fourth Lateran Council in the 1200s. And that's a totally different subject, and one that I'm actually really interested in because there are some other things that went on at the Fourth Lateran Council. Anyway, and for those who might have just found this YouTube channel, I'm not Catholic, by the way. I'm evangelical. So, but this kind of stuff really actually interests me because I think it actually traces a lot of what we believe and why we believe it today. And this even touches into the Reformation. Okay, so Nicholas sends these emissaries, and so he sends these emissaries to Emperor Michael, and basically the emperor decides, okay, we'll retry Ignatius. We'll retry him, and we'll see whether or not Photius should actually be the rightful bishop of Constantinople. So there is a trial, and there's a retrial of Ignatius. Pope Nicholas I attends this trial, and he's not super kind. He's not really nice to the people from Constantinople, and because of this, and well, I'm sure many other reasons, they once again rule against Ignatius and side with Photius, and this really sets Nicholas I off. Nicholas was not so nice to those who represented Constantinople, and not surprisingly, they ruled once again against Ignatius. Okay, at this point, I'm going to actually open up this book. I'm going to read a paragraph out of here because they put it so very well. They say, at this point, things quickly went from bad to worse. Michael wrote what may have been the most outlandish letter in Byzantine diplomatic history, in which he evidently ascribed Pope Nicholas's reinstatement of Ignatius, because basically what has happened at this point is that Pope Nicholas I says, fine, I'm not going to accept this council anyway. We're going to go back to Rome, and we're going to retry Ignatius, and I'm going to put him as the bishop of Constantinople. I'm going to reinstate him as the bishop of Constantinople. Okay, so this is basically what's going on at this point, and Michael is not happy. Michael wrote what may have been the most outlandish letter in Byzantine diplomatic history, in which he evidently ascribed Pope Nicholas's reinstatement of Ignatius to the ignorance of a backwater politician, while again arguing that the Pope had no right to intervene in the internal affairs of Constantinople. Nicholas countered with a long justification of papal supremacy over all affairs, procedural and liturgical as well as doctrinal, of the whole church. He also held out an unexpected carrot. If both Ignatius and Photius would come to Rome with their supporters, Nicholas himself would hear the dispute. Naturally, this invitation was ignored. Okay, so he doesn't he Nicholas basically says that he's going to retry Ignatius, and this really is what sets things off. Well, guess what? Photius, the now Bishop of Constantinople, is not too keen to be deposed either. And so what he does is he writes a letter, and what he says is that, well, you know what, it doesn't really matter anyway, because, and this is where our controversy comes in, because Rome is heretical. Now, this is kind of shocking. Where in the world does Photius get this? What he says is that Rome and the Pope has actually inserted an extra word into one of the standard creeds that's been around for 500 years, and that is the Nicene Creed. What has been inserted by the Roman Church now is this phrase, Filioque. And, okay, this might seem like it still doesn't really matter, but basically what Photius argues is that the Pope doesn't have authority to change creeds. The only people who have the authority to change creeds are, in fact, councils themselves. This was established by the fact that the Second Lateran Council at Constantinople in 381 was the one who actually changed the First Nicene Creed. And so he argues that it's only councils who can change church-accepted and council-accepted creeds. The Pope can't do that. And so because of this, he said, basically, this is all a power struggle, but it's a brilliant move by Photius, because basically what he does is he says, no. It doesn't matter if the statement is true or not. What the Pope has done in Rome is he has changed one of our accepted creeds, which he's not allowed to do. And everybody knows that he's not allowed to do that. And therefore, he's a heretic, because only councils can change a creed. And so if he really wanted Filioque to be added into the Nicene Creed, then what he would have had to do is call a council and have the council actually agree that Filioque needed to be added to the Nicene Creed. Instead, he didn't do that, which means that he basically has gone outside of the realm of the ecumenical powers that be, according to the Catholic Church and according to Catholic doctrine and according to everything that has been in history up to this point. And therefore, we don't have to listen to the Bishop of Rome, i.e. the Pope. And the reason why is because he is a heretic, because he has added something to a creed without the permission of a council. Basically, what's going on is this is all just one big power struggle, so that Constantinople has power to do what they want to do, and so that Photius can remain as Bishop of Constantinople, and so that they can reject the Roman power of the Pope. And what did this end up doing? Because of this, everybody in Constantinople said, yeah, Photius is right. The Pope doesn't have the power to add something to the Nicene Creed, and so the fact that he added Filioque to the Nicene Creed means that he's a heretic. This actually split the Western and the Eastern Church, and it is split even to this day. Now, there has been some discussion on the idea of the Filioque, and even the Eastern Church agrees that the term Filioque probably should be added to the Nicene Creed. However, what the Eastern Church still disagrees on is that the Pope has ultimate power. This is something that really came to a head, as I already said, in the Fourth Lateran Council in the 1200s. However, to this day, the Eastern and the Western Church are split over the power of the Pope and over basically the Filioque and the adding of this phrase to the Nicene Creed. And this is what the Filioque controversy is. It took me a really long time to figure all of this out, and I hope that I've maybe brought it down into an easy to understand video, even though it's long. I know that this is a long video to try to explain the Filioque, but if you have any more questions about it, I highly recommend this book, The Story of the Creeds and the Confessions, tracing the development of the Christian faith. All right, I hope that I have cleared some of this up for you, and I hope that this has been an informative video. I'll see you next time here on Growing Messiah. Don't forget to like and subscribe this video.